The Hollow. Chapter 1. The Visitor. I've always felt a sense of unease, an unsettling tingling at the back of my neck when I'm alone in public places. It's as if eyes were upon me, following my every move despite being surrounded by strangers. After months of sleepless nights and constant paranoia, I couldn't ignore it any longer. So here I am, standing in front of a cozy apartment in the heart of the city, clutching my suitcase with trembling hands. The building's exterior exudes warmth. Brick facade, old-fashioned lanterns casting an amber glow on the sidewalk below. Perhaps this change will finally bring me peace. Maybe it'll be a fresh start. The door to 314 creaked open as I stepped inside, revealing a musty air that hinted at years of disuse. The landlord, Mr. Jenkins, ushered me towards the elevator with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. On the ride up, my mind wandered back to those unending nights of watching the shadows on my ceiling. Shadows that moved when I wasn't looking directly at them. The apartment itself was surprisingly spacious and well-maintained for its age, adorned with rich woodwork and plush furniture. However, a lingering sense of unease clung to it like a forgotten scent. As night fell, I found myself pacing the dimly lit living room, trying to settle in. Fatigue had taken hold when I noticed a silhouette perched on my windowsill. My heart lurched, or so I thought. It was just the play of moonlight against the curtains. Sighing, I turned to grab a glass of water and caught sight of it again. A tall figure standing motionless outside, silhouetted by the pale moonlight cutting through the panes. No one could be out there at this hour. I approached cautiously, heart pounding in my ears. Peering out, nothing. Darkness swallowed everything below. Trees swaying in an absent breeze in a narrow alley that plunged into darkness. My imagination had caught up with me. Days passed, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Doors creaked open by themselves. The refrigerator hummed on at night despite being turned off. It was as if I lived within someone else's nightmare, yet was powerless to wake up from it. Then there were the whispers. Soft murmurs of conversation carried in through walls that seemed to hold a secret language only they knew, though no one resided nearby. My sleep became scarce and fitful. A persistent shadow of dread hung over my days. That night, as I drifted off, a chill crept down my spine when the window rattled, almost imperceptibly. It was just wind, surely. I awoke to an icy breeze caressing my face. Squinting through bleary eyes, I saw it. A figure once more outside, standing perfectly still like a statue in the moon's gaze. A shiver coursed down my spine as I threw off the blankets and rushed to the window. The silhouette was closer now, leaning forward, but its features remained obscured by darkness. In that moment, an inexplicable feeling settled within me. I wasn't alone. A muffled scream pierced the night air from downstairs. A man's voice, rising and falling like desperation for help or despair. My pulse quickened as I fumbled for my phone to call 911. But when I peered through the balcony door, nothing but an empty alleyway greeted me. The next day arrived with little respite from those shadows dancing at the edge of perception. Each night saw the same figure on my windowsill. Each dawn broke with a new mystery. Books misplaced, cupboard drawers slightly ajar. It wasn't until I opened a refrigerator to prepare breakfast that I felt it. Eyes watching me, unblinking and utterly wrong. The sensation was palpable as an icy hand tracing my neck. My gaze fell upon the window. There he stood, no more than 10 feet away, faceless and still. My stomach twisted into knots. It wasn't imagination anymore. As I turned to flee, something smudged against the glass caught my eye. A smeared red thumbprint. In that instant, all rationality fled as it was replaced with raw fear. I clutched my purse and bolted for the door, but the front lock wouldn't budge at first try nor second. A voice like wind through dry leaves whispered right behind me. "Sarah." I whirled, empty space greeting me, and turned back to force entry again as a gust of cold air swept across my face. With shaking hands, I opened it, dashing down the stairs without looking back. Below, an elderly woman hurried away from her doorstep, eyes wide with concern. I mumbled something inaudible about intruders before closing the door, locking it tightly behind me. In that moment of hasty escape, I didn't notice a piece of paper tacked to my front door. A simple drawing of a girl with hollow eyes and dark hair tied back into a bun. The woman's calloused hand reached out for mine as she passed. "Child, don't invite it in." My bewildered gaze met hers as she hurried away down the alleyway, her gray coat billowing behind. Another night found me standing before my window, pleading with an unseen entity to show itself. The silhouette materialized again, eyes that seemed bottomless staring through the glass, and I recognized the girl from my doorstep. A porcelain doll clutched in her bony hand stared back. I threw open the balcony door as she drifted closer, swaying unnaturally to one side. When our gazes met, I gasped, "Who are you?" No reply came, but she offered me Lily's doll with a skeletal smile. I took it hesitantly, and the girl vanished into shadows that seemed almost sentient, leaving me questioning sanity. Upon waking, I found an old diary buried amongst the moving boxes, adorned with crimson flowers embossed on its cover. The front page bore a date, November 13th, 1955. It was Lily's handwriting. Her story unfolded between worn pages as night descended. I read about a girl who had taken refuge here decades ago from an abusive lover, only to be stalked by an unseen force. Her cries were silenced when a mysterious fire consumed her apartment. A chill crept in despite the heat. The whispers grew louder each night, echoing within my mind. Lily's frantic pleas as flames engulfed the building. It seemed I wasn't alone here anymore. This time, she whispered a single word. "Run!" An eerie compulsion took hold, and with the doll clutched tightly to my chest, I rushed downstairs into that fateful night. The alleyway was empty, but for an old book lying face down amidst trash. As I picked it up, pages fluttered out like yellowed leaves. Tucked within was a photograph of Lily, a girl who bore more resemblance to the figure watching me than any living person ever should. Chapter 2. The Whisper. Dread laced each breath as I read on, Lily's last days unfolding before my eyes. Her presence seeped into the present with every page. One evening, the whispering became a constant hum that pierced my eardrums, an unspoken plea for help. When I emerged from her tragic tale, it ceased, replaced by a silence so thick it seemed to suffocate. That night, I heard Lily's name whispered through these walls. Shadows moved beyond my door, as though clawing at the other side. I dared not speak. Only Lily escaped my trembling lips before the door jolted open of its own accord. A musty smell greeted me with an ancient tome, a journal belonging to her. Faint impressions in ink described the haunting and final moments before death. Determined to confront whatever was here, I entered her apartment amidst a symphony of unseen scratching. Inky fingerprints covered her walls. Lily's writing spoke of malevolence that seeped from crevices and dark corners, a silent stalker. Her words became my lullaby, The final entry described the night of the fire. The doll seemed to stare at me now as I settled upon an unmade bed, clutching it like an anchor against the void. A raspy breath sounded close by. Shadows danced around us in rhythmic pattern and suddenly coalesced into a dark form. Lily's ghost spoke through my dreams. "Find what lies hidden here," she implored before disappearing. An old lock clicked behind me as I turned to face the door. The doll felt heavier. My hand traced its surface when nails scrabbled against the wood from the inside. The bedroom had changed, adorned with antique trinkets and a photograph of flames licking an apartment. Lily's voice echoed through walls. Her spirit, once lost, now caged like me. I was about to leave when a book slid off my shelf. "Don't let it out." In the hollowed space between pages, there was a hidden compartment. Something pulsating and mummified beneath aged paper. The stench of smoke clung to it. With trembling fingers, I uncoiled blackened remains. Charred remnants of a journal belonging to her lover, James. His guilt-ridden musings spoke of an inescapable presence that consumed them all. I knew then. There were two presences, Lily's and the thing she called Erebus. A dark mass was coming for me if I didn't unravel these echoes before nightfall. My research revealed a local legend about Erebus, born from darkness. An entity drawn to suffering souls who sought solace in forgotten places. The room vibrated with each heartbeat. Lily's specter drifted by my shoulder, as if urging forward. A crimson tome lay open on the desk, penned by James himself, an incantation against it. Beneath his writing a single word, Erebus. I scrawled the riddle in blood, streaked ink before darkness paled to a ghostly presence, the air thickening with malevolence. Lily's form wavered behind Erebus, her eyes pleading as it spoke through my mind. "Be gone from here." In an act of defiance or foolhardiness, I wrote a word that shook my hand. Erebus. The world shuddered, and the presence retreated into the bowels of the night, leaving me breathless. Drenched in sweat, the doll lay on Lily's bed, pulsing with a dark power I dared not confront as day broke. But when I faced the balcony door, it was ajar, revealing a chasm that seemed to yawn into nothingness. Erebus lingered, watching from the edge, waiting for another soul in the perpetual gloom beneath. Chapter 3. The Final Revelation. The doll felt heavier with every step towards this abyss. Lily's specter kept pace behind me, pleading. Erebus, a dark void within my mind, spoke through our bond. A low murmur of its presence. In the chasm's depths, there lay fragments of her story and what she'd left in the hollows of forgotten hearts. It wanted me to understand Lily's pain. The doll seemed rooted as I descended into Erebus's maw until the floor fell away. Deeper I ventured, an aged old tome floating before me. A journal penned by both lovers, James and myself. Faintly, I heard Sarah. A crimson script whispered Erebus in my mind, followed by an old name etched across each page. James. My hands trembled as they found entries that mirrored the darkness outside. Every word felt like a nail to a coffin lid. An inscrutable language flowed from my pen, and Lily's specter loomed close, the doll's gaze burning. Her form began fading into darkness with an unreadable expression before vanishing into Erebus. In its depths, I found pages of James' confession, his love for an abused wife. The final entry spoke of a secret passage hidden beneath this very building. Beneath Lily's room, An entrance yawned like the abyss above my apartment, promising solace in darkness. An unspoken pact had been forged between us. Erebus was drawn to those desperate for escape. A blackness consumed me as I descended deeper. There I found trinkets from the hollow hearts of others and a final tome, my own confessions of pain. In this abyssal heartland, it awaited. An unseen force pressed upon my back. I faced Erebus. It spoke, Sarah. The doll's eyes flashed red as darkness descended to consume us both, until an ancient book slammed shut with a resounding thud above. Daylight seeped through an open door. Unscathed and adrift, I ascended the final stairwell. Lily was gone. Erebus had vanished. All that remained were memories from those who sought reprieve in darkness. My hands felt heavy, a relic of what I could become if I allowed it to consume me. The doll's eyes dimmed as I closed her door behind my return upstairs.